Welcome back to another episode. Today I sit down with Steve Baxley, who's been a breeder of Collies under the oversight of the American Kennel Club for over 45 years. In 2017, Steve co-founded Palmetto Service Dogs, a nonprofit organization that provides healthy, professionally trained Collies to veterans with PTSD and children and adults with autism, diabetes, or epilepsy with his mentor, Deen Doughty. Between Steve and Deen, there is more than a century of experience with the Collie breed that includes genetic testing, training, raising, and exhibiting according to the AKC standard for the breed. And this understanding leads them to offer Collies that are capable of excellent service work. So you're training service dogs mostly for veterans that are suffering from PTSD, or some that have physical injuries as well, or are you primarily focused on PTSD?
No, some of the veterans also have heart trouble too. We have some veterans that come back with severe depression and they try to commit suicide. And if we find out about this person, they contact us when they know they're having these issues. We try to match them with a dog that will prevent them from doing that. We have one guy that has one of my dogs that's for. We do for autistic children. I worked at the Savannah River Site for 25 years as a nuclear chemical operator. So when I retired early, I started subbing at schools. And it seems like they always put me in sometime with the special kids, or they mixed a lot of the autistic children in with the classrooms. Mm-hmm. So a lot of these little guys would start to have a meltdown. Some of them did have a meltdown. And I never knew anything about autism. But I noticed real quickly there was something different about these kids. And so I always tried to diffuse. A lot of times the kids in class would kind of agitate the kids, so I tried to diffuse it. So my heart really started going out to autistic kids. And probably out of all the people that I meet for these service dogs, meet with are autistic. A lot of them are autistic. But we also do diabetic alert dogs and epilepsy. Like some of the kids that have the autism also have epilepsy, or maybe even the diabetes too. We have a couple that have leukemia, a set of twins that have leukemia. Service dogs aren't just for the person, especially in a family. These dogs touch so many different lives. The parents, they make a huge difference in the parent's life. Just having the dog in the house and the situations that are pretty much, in a lot of cases, diminished, that they were having to deal with every day.
Now, what is your process when you have, let's say you have a litter, you want all these puppies to be service dogs, you already have people selected, you're gonna be working with them throughout the entire process. You and your team does most of the training. Does your son pretty much, is he the head of the canine training department?
He is the trainer at this point.
Okay, perfect. So then what is your, let's go over the step-by-step process. How do you do the imprinting at the beginning? How do you start doing your socializing? Because I know we were talking about that earlier and how important that is to you. Teaching the dogs how to play as well, allowing them to be puppies, teaching them crate training for potty training, but also not keeping them in the crate 24/7.
Right.
Because it's not, I'm in the crate all the time and I come out only to train. Right. So there's a lot that goes into it. The best you can you break down how you guys do that over there?
Yeah, I think so. Grant is my trainer. He went, like we mentioned maybe earlier, he went to Tom Rose and Michael Ellis, so he got a great mixture of them both.
My opinion, two best schools in the country.
Yes, he learned so much from Tom Rose School, Dave, and his instructors that were there. And then he came all the way to California to spend time with Michael Ellis' school, which he learned a lot more. It's just a well combination of both, and now he's kind of, as most trainers, as yourself, you kind of like take some from this one and that one, and you kind of make it
your own.
They might be all different methods, but you make it your own, how you want to work it, and your own personality plays a big part into it, and relating to the dog. So what Grant does for me, the day they're born, he's actually in the whelping box with me. This last litter we just had, he was in there always touching their feet from day one, turning them upside down, touching them, and then when they get where they can feel a different surface, maybe about 3 weeks old, he has different grates he puts in the box for them to be walking on. All kinds of toys, making noise. They're set up in our laundry room at our house, so they hear the washing machine our washing machine, everything goes all the time. And dryer, the buzzer's going off. Music,
Constant exposure.
Constant exposure.
And I'm asking this too because a lot of my viewers are attempting or they're in the process of training their own service dogs.
Oh, okay.
So the more information so I'm not too worried about the puppy culture.
Yeah.
But after that, let's say from about 8 to 10 weeks and beyond, what starts at that point? What is Grant doing there? What is the socializing aspect and the training and the focus?
Unlike what I've always done as a breeder, he doesn't feed them out of a bowl. They have to work for their food.
I do that as well.
Been a big adjustment for me because I like the little fat puppies. He's like, no, that's not good. So anyway, and it's really worked well with this last litter. He set up different obstacle courses, pretty much like, probably you and Michael Ellis. I think he learned that part from Michael Ellis, where they'd run through and jump in a tub to get to their food that's full of all kinds of noisy things.
You need to post a video of that. I'll share it so my audience can see, because that is something that I actually talked about, I believe, in one of my Q&As.
Yeah.
Because people are always asking about confidence building. So I'm glad you mentioned that. And I said, there's a lot of breeders out there where they will build a little puppy obstacle course. Nothing too challenging, but something that the puppy has to be able to go through, accomplish it in order to get to their food.
Yeah.
And then that builds their confidence. And it does so much when you have a confident dog.
Right.
It helps with the training. It makes everything significantly easier.
Yeah.
So contrary to the popular belief of making a submissive dog.
Oh yeah, it's great to expose them to all kinds of noises. We had people out on our property with, which I had rented some too, tractors and different things. I rode them, bulldozers. I rode them up right beside the exercise pen they were in. I put them right in front of where we park our cars, so when we pull up, they hear the noises of the cars. They really don't flinch a whole lot, and that's what you want out of a service dog. You don't want really a fearful dog. And
well, they also feed off of the parents.
Yeah.
So since you've been doing it for so long and you've been imprinting them, and you have this really strong line that is comfortable in environments, is confident, is intelligent, they're able to learn things really fast. And it plays a big role when you have these parents that are very well balanced, very well adjusted, and well trained. Because the puppies feed off that.
The temperament.
There's a loud noise, and the parents are like, it's no big deal.
Goes back to the purposeful breeding. You know the genetics, you know the parents. These puppies, and I keep them as long as until the mother decides she don't want to be around them anymore. It's important for the mother to be with them.
I agree. Yep.
Them puppies, the only bowl they ever ate out of was out of her bowl. This is the first litter actually that I ever didn't do the mash up the food and wet it and all that. They've been eating their puppy dry from day, 4 weeks old. As soon as they had teeth, they were crunching on the kibble.
Oh, really?
With the mother, yeah.
Oh, no kidding.
And she stayed with them till they were 8 weeks old. And one day she just got tired of them. She didn't do anything. She just quit going in there with them.
Now, I'm sure you've heard of the Sibling syndrome, or whatever they call it, where they recommend not getting two puppies from the same litter because there could be issues with that. So how do you guys work with that when you're doing the service dog training and you have 4 dogs from one litter?
We always separate the puppies once they start training. They're not together at all. In fact, these puppies, I started crate training them at 4 weeks old.
Oh, wow.
So they were pretty young. They fussed. They wasn't in the same crate. They were beside each other, which I think maybe Mike would do it differently next time, put them in separate rooms. You'll find out with your puppy tonight.
How many training sessions does Grant shoot for each day with the puppies that are in training to be a service dog? And how often do you have the person, if they're local, so if you have someone who lives maybe an hour away and they're going to be getting the service dog, how often do they get to come down, or do you wait till the end?
No.
Do you do a course for them?
We prefer it to be local so we can do that. It depends on the child. Like with Chance, his 13-year-old, I waited till Chance was probably 8 months old. And then I talked to the mother to make sure that she knew that her daughter would understand when we took the dog away. But it's very important for them to meet. Some people and dogs just don't mesh very well together. So you want to match the person with the right dog. So that's very important. And actually, when the day I took Chance to Aubrey, her name's Aubrey, she has autism. She's almost genius. She's very intelligent. The moment he walked in the room and saw her and she kneeled down, the way he reacted to her, I've never seen him react to anybody, not even me. I mean, he kissed her all over her face. It was like
it was perfect from the beginning.
Perfect from the beginning. And it happened. What happened so much is that the dad was like, please let him stay. Well, I couldn't. Number one, I required the dog to be neutered, before I let him go. But he was begging me for months because he saw the difference. He said even after that first night, her meltdowns started diminishing.
Wow.
So he's like, we got to have that dog. We got to have it. I said, well, we got to finish with him first. So he went early. He actually went, instead of going at 18 months, I think I let him go at 12 on a trial basis. And he started going to the beach with them. She has two brothers that play that tournament ball, and they go all the time. Chance goes with them, and they always send me pictures of them in the back seat, laying down with her. And she's the type of child that you love your children, but no parent wants to be in that position with their child. It's heartbreaking. So he's helped her keep from jumping out of the car, going down the road, jumping out of her room. She loves reptiles, so we're hoping that she loves salamanders, and she actually uncovered like a war moccasin. And so we're hoping that Chance will keep her from doing that. So
it's amazing.
She leaves school. She'll leave school on her own. So Chance goes to school with her too. Rode all the Disney rides that he could with her at Disney. And Tiffany, her mother, said this is the first time they've ever been to a amusement park. She didn't have a meltdown. And when I'm talking about meltdowns with Aubrey, I'm talking about they have to call police, the canine squad in to even contain her. She's very strong and medicated. Has to be medicated. But the dogs always seem to calm her down, the canine dogs that they brought in. So that part's not just a collie, but she needed her own dog. So.
But having the service dog really impacted her life, which that's
Yes.
what service dogs do.
Yeah.
They change people's lives for
Right.
the better. And often people ask me, well, what qualifies as a service dog? And really, if you have a disability of any
Right.
kind, and the service dog improves the quality of your life
Right.
by providing specific tasks that
Right.
help with your disability,
That's right.
then it's a service dog. Now, you made me think of another question that I wanted to ask you, and this is because this is a common question that I get with any sort of training. And I know we were talking about this earlier because there's really not a black and white answer.
Uh-huh.
It is the training time that it takes depending on the service dog. So
Right.
I'm sure it varies between what maybe the fastest you could train a dog to the longest, and what causes those variations. So let's say some of your dogs you can have trained and out the door in
Right.
a year, and some take a year and a half.
Right.
Why is that? What is the difference?
It depends on the disability of the child. And you made me think of something different by saying that. It could depend on the dog, because not all dogs learn the same at the same rate.
I was actually thinking both, and you said both right away.
See, I never thought about that too much, but mainly what I thought about was and know about is the disability of the person getting the dog.
Do you ever have a set time frame where you go, the dog has to be done at this point, or do you train until mission accomplished?
Train until mission accomplished, pretty much, and usually it's never 24 months. I think a max would probably be 18 months.
Now, if you were training a CNI dog
Right.
or something like that, 24 plus
Yeah.
months would be very normal.
Right.
PTSD dogs, very normal year.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
their tasks are not as complicated.
Right. A lot of times PTSD, just the dog itself, a good obedience trained dog, depending on the disability again, but sometimes it's the companionship and maybe deep pressure therapy for when they're in a crowd like at the VA.
And how long do you continue to work with the family after they have the service dog?
As long as they have the dog.
So indefinitely.
Indefinitely, yeah. I never go away.
They're stuck with you.
They're stuck with me, just like even my pet dogs and my dogs I've sold to show homes and stuff. They never get rid of me. I'm texting probably once a month everybody that has one of my
Well,
dogs.
good thing you're a really nice guy, so it makes it easier.
Yeah. I try not to bug them or anything, but I'll just send them a text and say, how's everything going? Especially with the service dogs. Are there any problems? Because we also will go back and if they're having an issue, or if the dog needs a refresher on something, we go back and do that. And all they have to do is call me. A lot of times, what's great about service dog homes, people also take the initiative to do some self-training with the dog themselves. We have a little boy that has autism and he's epileptic, and they're doing now training with him. I haven't been involved with waking the parents up when he's about to have an epileptic seizure. Oh, wow. And so a lot of people will take the initiative to do some continued training on their own.
And speaking of doing training on their own, you and your team should start a YouTube channel. Start posting the training process. And, service dogs are very popular on YouTube right now because there are so many people out there that want to train their own service dog. And the more resources that they have, the better. So not just my channel. I mean, for example, my Facebook group page that I have for my YouTube channel, I encourage people to post other training videos, other techniques, because I want people to have a huge range of techniques to choose from, so they're able to choose the technique that works best for that dog. And what are what advice could you give all the people out there that are training their own service dogs, as far as what you've seen with your son training and the training that you've done? Because you're very modest. You know a lot about dog training, even though you don't say you're a dog trainer. You know a lot about it, and you've read a lot of dog training books, and you see it every day.
Dogs since I was, my whole life. I think I had a collie actually when I was 2. My mom had one.
Really?
Yeah, that might have been the big influence, bigger than the lady across the street. But I think the biggest thing would probably be whether you're getting one from a pound or a good breeder. I mean, it's very important to find a good breeder, but I'm not saying you can't find a good one in a pound. But you need to know, to me, I'm more for the breeder as far as this goes, a good breeder, because they should know the genetics. You can look at their dogs. When you go to get a dog from a pound, you don't know where he's coming from or what he's experienced, even though there's some good ones.
Yeah. You have to spend a lot of time looking, and to go off of that, the show that I had on Animal Planet, Rescue Dog to Super Dog, we trained 12 service dogs total. To find those 12 dogs, it took us 2 months checking every shelter in LA every day.
Wow.
We went every single day. I mean, I was going to these shelters so much that I knew dogs by name. They recognized me. It was as if I worked at each one of these shelters in order to find the ones that were perfect for what we needed them for. So it's doable, but you really have to take the time.
I think the biggest thing too is looking at the breed, because we all know that labs and retrievers are great dogs for service work. I didn't know this till I learned this at Tom Rose School. The poodles.
Poodles are excellent.
I had no, and what was the other one? Was it Schnauzer?
Depends on what they're training them for. Like a border collie could be a service dog as well, but
they're so smart.
But they're also so active that I wouldn't recommend a border collie to be a service dog for somebody who is in a wheelchair and is not really that active. But maybe if I'm training a service dog for a veteran that's suffering from PTSD, a more active breed is going to be suitable for him because it can provide those services that he needs simultaneously.
Right, a young veteran that also that has PTSD that runs on the beach or whatever, you may want, may intrigue his mind on things to do, give him things.
Yeah, and sometimes people will look at a veteran that has a service dog and think, what does that person need a service dog for? Just because you can't visually see the disability doesn't mean that they're not really struggling.
Kind of like this guy, besides the tattoos, and looking at him, a big smile on his face, you would never know he's suffering with such severe depression that he would try to take his own life. So he has a dog like...
And the dog helps with it.
Has a dog like Gus.
Yeah. I like that name too, Gus.
Gus. So yeah, you need to look. Number one, look at the breed. I'd be very cautious about a shelter.
It's doable, but really take your time.
Doable, take your time. You need to find not just a purebred dog, but a purebred dog bred by a reputable breeder. That means he does DNA testing. I mean, everybody's learning about DNA tests. I have a lot of old collie breeders call me because they don't understand. I'm like, look, now that people know about DNA testing, which years before we had the markers, we had no way of doing this. Now that we do, a responsible breeder is going to test their puppies. And the customer's not stupid anymore. You got YouTube, you got the internet. They say, oh, what does PRA mean?
The general public is...
What is this CEA? So they're going to call you in question, so you need to educate yourself. And if you're going to be selling a puppy, because a good puppy, just a pet puppy, and I'm only speaking of a collie, and other breeds will be more is $1,500.
More or less, depending on the breed.
They say average $1,500 for a pet puppy. So if you're paying that kind of money, you don't want one that's going to die in a year or go blind, especially when you're buying a puppy for your kids.
Yeah, and when they're going to have a job, a responsibility.
Right.
I mean, it's the same thing with the police departments and the military. When they're getting their dogs, they're trying to find the best breeder, and they have breeders that they work with on a regular basis.
Right.
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the military gets a lot of their dogs from a buddy of mine who has a kennel called Logan Haas.
Yeah.
And he breeds a lot of the dogs for military, and they do very strict, specific tests to make sure the dogs can do what they need them to do. You know,
that's where the Malinois becomes so popular too, because they can do more than a shepherd. They're lighter, jumping out of the planes, and
they tend to have less health issues because they haven't been as overbred. And that's what's so scary though about what's happening with them now at the shelters, because of, you know, I really blame the movie John Wick 3, super entertaining movie, but you see these two Malinois in the movie, and what I found out that some of these people were doing to try to make money, they would tell people like, oh yeah, these are the puppies from John Wick 3.
Wow.
And they'll be able to do everything those dogs will be able to do.
Yeah, and that's what people believe.
And they could with the training.
Yeah.
Right? But even these people weren't doing the right steps that you're talking about to make sure that they're doing everything
they can do.
Yeah, to do it correctly. So now they have their puppy. Right. And they're doing the training, not those I'm talking about, the ones that they get for the service dog work.
Right.
What is some of the first stuff you guys like to do with your puppies after the first 8 weeks? What is the first step that you like to do so that they can replicate it, people that are watching, or advice that you have for them?
I think the first thing for any service dog you want to do is obedience, basic obedience. Because you want a service dog you can take out in public. They're not going to be jumping up on people. You can go out to eat and teach them to tuck under the table. When you have a service dog in public, you should not even know he's there. If you're sitting beside the table, you shouldn't even know the dog exists. The dogs that you know that aren't real service dogs, and that's a big problem now. People taking their dogs in Kroger and putting them in the buggy. That's not a service dog. A dog's not supposed to sit on the bench with you while you're eating. He's supposed to be under the table. There's a whole lot of things that we have an ADA, but they're to protect the person that owns the dog, really.
Yeah, and it's tough to really...
It's tough to distinguish. You're really not supposed to... You can only ask 2 questions of somebody that has a service dog. Is it a service dog? And what tasks do they perform for you?
I'm glad you brought that up, though, because there are a lot of people out there that are still in the middle of training their dog to be a service dog. So what I've noticed a lot of people do is they just put a service dog vest on and they take the dog out and claim that it's a service dog, even though it's still a service dog in training. And what I tell people is if you're training a service dog and you yourself do not need a service dog, put the in-training vest on. Most people are still going to leave you alone anyways, but also make it obvious that you're training. Not that you're just trying to take your dog with you. Like when I'm training a service dog, there is no question whether or not I'm training. It's very obvious I'm training. I have 100% focus on the dog because I'm teaching the dog how they need to act in public. I'm not out there for myself. I'm not out there going to get a cheeseburger or going, it's like I'm taking the dog to work them. And it's really clear. You can see it. So then if someone comes up and says, is that your service dog? I say, no, it's a service dog in training. 9 out of 10 times, no, more like 19 out of 20 times, they're going to say, okay, that's fine, keep training. Every now and then you might run into a business or a location where they say, sorry, the dog can't be in here, it's not a service dog, and you say, okay, no problem, and you walk out. But you're correct, a lot of people that are taking advantage of the system. There are risks though, because if you are claiming that a dog is a service dog and it's actually not, you can get up to a year in prison and $1,000 fine.
Wow, I didn't really know that. That's cool to look. That is cool to learn. They need to, and I've been in my not my seminars, but my presentations, I'm always talking about that, and I'm always saying they have to do something about this. They have to do something about it. So I'm glad to hear that.
The rules are out there now.
That's great.
How much of it is actually being enforced?
At least it's something that can be enforced.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because if you don't need a service dog, there's plenty of places you can take your pet dog.
Because you're ruining it for people that really do need their service dog.
Go to an outside eatery or something if you want your dog with you to eat.
Oh, if you're out
That's
here.
why I train my service dogs at an outside eatery before they're really good and trained, just to get them used to it. Teaching them tuck under the table and other dogs, not paying other dogs any attention. So you can pretty much spot a real service dog, I think.
Oh yeah, I agree. Or one in training.
Or one in training,
You know, but like I said, if you are training it, make sure you're training it.
Right, make sure you're training it.
You know, your focus has to be on that dog. The whole time I'm working with a puppy that I'm doing service dog training for, if I'm talking to somebody else, I'm doing this because I'm watching the dog the whole time.
Yeah.
Because we know we have that 1 second window when they do something in order to let them know that's good or that's not good, and to show them what they need to do to be correct in that that situation.
It makes a big difference.
Yep, constantly building up that confidence and that exposure. And
I had the benefit to watch Grant train pet dogs, and when you're training pet dogs, you have all kinds of dogs. You have all kinds of personalities, a lot of quirks sometimes, because you can buy a purebred dog and just throw him out in your backyard, and you might as well have went to the pound. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's going to be neurotic in a lot of cases, just kind of crazy. So I've been proud of him because seems like he has caught some really, it's his first year or so in training. He has really caught some of but he's done well. And so what I love about is he's learning to all dogs aren't the same. Mm-hmm. So he has to think a little bit, okay, this dog's not doing it like the last one did. What does this dog like? Different things motivate different dogs. Like I've seen in some of your videos, toys or some. Food can be for almost all of them if you get them ready for food.
Yeah, pretty much every dog
Skip a meal maybe.
Every dog's food motivated. It's just a matter of how much food motivation do they have. And you know, often the food motivation is lowered by either overfeeding, free feeding. You know, if why is a dog going to want to work for something if they can get it at any point in time? Right. You know, when they know, and that's why I do like the whole imprinting a dog on making them work for it, because it does build that food drive. And we all know that reward-based training is limited to how much the dog wants the reward that's being offered.
I think a couple of your videos I've watched about service dogs, which are really good. Harley, the service dog. I think there's some of the things you do need to start with. Of course, the engagement. I mean, I was watching Spock in here a while ago. He's very engaged with Rachel. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's the first step. If you're talking about training, not so much as the environmental, is the engagement is so important, luring and communication. Yeah. Letting them know that you love them. You know, they just want to please you. Mm. So I think it's more of the relationship between you and the dog. And maybe not be so tough, and understand they're going to get it. If you're doing the right methods, they'll eventually get it. You just may have to take longer with that dog.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that too, taking longer with a specific dog.
Right.
Something I tell people, and you know, we talked about this not too long ago, not having a set date on when you want something to be done. In fact, I got an email today. And the person said, "Oh, what should my expectations be? How much should my dog know in 2 weeks, or how much should my dog know in 3 weeks?" That's impossible for me to answer. First of all, I don't know the dog that you're working with. I don't know how intelligent the dog is, how motivated the dog is, how much perseverance that dog has. What are that dog's interests? I don't know these things, and I don't know how good of a trainer you are. Right. I don't know how good your timing is. I don't know how good your reward delivery. All these things. So a dog that may take someone like Michael Ellis 2 weeks to train might take somebody else 2 months to train. Right. You know,
and that can all go with their experience too.
And that's why I don't have a goal. Like, I want this to be done at this point. Right. Have fun with your dogs. Right. Just train them and work with them every day.
And they'll get it. As long as they know you have to be firm. I always tell my son, training dogs is just like raising kids. One of the biggest things you have to do is be consistent. Mm. If you're not consistent with them, they don't really know what to expect out of you. Oh, my dad lets me lay on the couch today, and then he don't tomorrow. So it's kind of like they have a mixed signal. Right. So you have to be consistent with them.
I like that you said mixed signal too, because I think we were talking about this earlier as well. Just basic common mistakes that people make. For example, someone's calling the dog to come to them. Right. And the dog looks at them because they're making noise, and the dog doesn't instantly come, and the person's like, "Get over here!" Right. And then the dog goes, "Ooh, I do not want to come to you. Right. Why am I going to want to come to you if you're yelling at me already?"
Yeah, exactly. Yelling can be the worst thing.
And I saw someone doing that the other day, and I said, once your dog looks at you, start praising them, because your dog is thinking about whatever they're looking at. Right. So if your dog turns and looks at you, and then you're still what they appear to be reprimanding them, they're not going to want to come to you. No. The moment they look, you have to be like, "Yeah, good puppy."
Kind of like I think it might have been in your interview, might have been with Bethany, about going to, which we know we don't like dog parks. Stay away from dog parks. there's too many problems and issues. You can take them somewhere else. You can like socialize your dog somewhere else besides the dog park.
I like dog beaches because they're more open.
Beaches are great.
But yeah, the dog park, it's just, I'm always worried about, is
infectious
somebody
diseases.
else's that.
The first dog I ever took to a dog park got pneumonia.
Really?
He did. Because they had like a little pool for him to swim in. He got in there. The next day he was sick. I took him to the vet. He had pneumonia.
Or getting attacked.
Attacked, yeah.
If you have a puppy that, let's say it's 15 weeks of age, it's still within the imprinting period.
Right.
You take it to the dog park and it's first time interacting with dogs. 2 of them attack them.
Right.
Or 3, before I knew about how dangerous dog parks could be,
right.
before I was a dog trainer, I would take my dogs all the time.
Right.
And I had my dog at one of the local dog parks out here, and she was attacked by 3 dogs. And the person who had the 3 dogs brought all 3 dogs there, which they advise against too, because once you do that, now you're creating this pack mentality.
Right.
And those 3 dogs rushed mine. And then from that point on, that dog was always uncomfortable around other dogs.
Yeah.
And had I not gone to the dog park,
wouldn't have happened.
I wouldn't have had that issue.
And I think it's wonderful to train your dogs in different locations. Grant started when he got back from Michael Ellis, training with a guy in Atlanta that does police dogs, protection. And every week I went up there with him. Grant went longer than I did. I went probably 4 times. We were always at a different location. Now he had, of course, get permission if you need to. But there's all kinds of parks, state parks, schools. We went to a church that had a big, just great place. They did a lot. They were doing a lot of tracking and stuff, scent detection and stuff. So I think it's great to train them dogs. Not just, you don't want to just train them in your own backyard. PetSmart, Tractor Supply we go to. Tractor Supply is a great place.
Petco, a lot of those big...
Let them get up. Grant had a few comments because he let one of his dogs get up on something, but we don't worry about that. But
was he doing a climb command?
Yeah, he lets them jump on. It's not only just the height, but it's also the noise they make. Like he'll jump on a metal drum or climb up on a big old thing of dog food. I think the comment he got was one of them jumped up on a dog bed. And somebody did.
Oh, really?
That. But you're always going to have the trolls.
But that's a big part of what you're saying is getting the dog generalized,
right, to
the training as far as.
And you can start that as young as you can. It's best maybe to wait until after they've had their last shot. But I feel pretty comfortable after maybe the second shot.
Yeah, and what I do with that, and people have asked me about this quite a bit because veterinarians will say don't take your dog out in public until they've received all their vaccinations, and it makes sense coming from the perspective of a veterinarian. Their responsibility is to keep your dog healthy.
Right.
And then you look at a dog trainer's perspective, their responsibility is to make sure you have a well-balanced, well-trained, well-socialized dog. So you have to look at it from both perspectives. And of course, if you are taking your dog out before they've had all their vaccinations, there is a risk.
Right.
And the risk is going to vary depending on where you take them. So for example, if I'm working with a puppy, especially one that's going to be a service dog, I am taking them out.
Right.
But I'm not taking them to places that are high risk. I'm not taking them to the dog park, big box pet stores.
Right.
If you live, let's say you live in New York, I'm not going to be taking the dog walking around the street there because there's way more traffic.
Right.
If you live out in the country and you don't have that many people walking by with their dogs, more likely than not, they're all already vaccinated and they're not going to be a risk. So you just have to be smart about where you're taking them.
And make sure you get their vaccinations.
Yes.
A lot of dogs that get parvo have never been vaccinated.
Or they have been vaccinated and they had a faulty vaccination.
Well, what happens with that, when you give a puppy a shot at 6 weeks old, they already have immunity from their mother from the colostrum from the first milk she has. So sometimes that overrides the shot.
No, interesting.
It actually overrides the shot. So you may think they're protected from the first shot, but they may not get protected until like maybe the second or third shot.
Oh, okay.
The fourth shot is really after 16 weeks is the best route, the safest route to take. But
safest, yes.
Safest, but that don't mean you can't do it responsibly.
Yeah, and that's what I always try to
responsibly
educate people on, because for me the socializing is so important. I have an article on it, and it's also in my manual where I go over the whole section of how I like to socialize a dog. But what that section really is more about getting the dog generalized to the training, which is important to point out to people that do train their dogs in their home. If they only train in the living room and then they take their dog and try to do obedience at the local park or at the local Home Depot, the dog's not going to perform the same.
They're not.
They have to get them generalized. So what exactly is the concept of getting a dog?
Grant tries to get his clients too, when he's training them, he does like a board and train, And so I think they have 4 lessons with them too. So he tries to get them not at our house or at our facility, but out in different places with them, so they can learn to work in different environments, the dog and the people.
So now Grant has his own dog training business, and then he does the dog training for your nonprofit, Training Service Dogs.
As soon as he come from Michael Ellis, I hired him.
What is his dog training business name?
Don't take your dog for granted.
Don't take your dog for granted. So that's the website, don'ttakeyourdogforgranted.com. I'm going to put that in the description, because people who are in your area, South Carolina, where exactly?
Georgia and South Carolina. He actually gets most of his clients from Augusta, Georgia. We live right on the river, which is in between where we live and Augusta. So he gets a lot of his clients from Augusta.
Because I always have a lot of people asking me different places of the country, like, hey, do you know a trainer in this area? Do you know a trainer? And I trust Tom Rose graduates, and he's a Tom Rose graduate, and I trust students of Michael Ellis, and he has both of them.
We have the same experience.
I highly recommend him to anybody that's in that area. If they want a well-trained dog, if they want somebody that knows dog training, knows the science, and knows how to teach it.
I know a lot of them that, in fact, I saw that you were a friend of Abigail. And I said, they know each other. I told Grant, I said, they know each other. He said, we all kind of know each other. Tom Rose people, It's
a very small world.
And what's so great about it is, and I've watched it with Grant, it seems like I relate everything back to Grant, but in the training, it's like they can bounce things off each other. Even some of the people at Michael Ellis, he's having a specific problem with one of his dogs training, and he don't quite know what to do. He can call one of them, and they've had that experience. So they say, try this. And he does the same thing for them. So it's a network that is really beneficial to everybody. So, and he's got the experience with Michael and with Tom Rose and Dave and Jeremy and them. So,
and they all follow the same science.
They do.
And it's the same thing that I mentioned to everybody who asks me questions about, what do you think about this technique, or what do you think about that? And for me, it's like, look at the technique and ask yourself, does it apply the science? And if you study how I train, or if you study how Michael Ellis trained, or Tom Rose, we were talking about that earlier with Tom Rose's book. Tom Rose's book is I believe it's 18 years old now. And so some of the techniques or some of the ways that he trains has changed a little bit in the 18 years since he wrote the book, but the book applies the science.
It does.
And that's what's the most important thing. And then you get to pick and choose. I like this that Michael Ellis does. I like this that Tom Rose does. I like what Forrest Mickey does over here. I like what Bart Bellin does over here. I like what Carol what's her name?
Carol
Bridget or something like that. I'm messing up her name, but you take something, and then you come up with your own kind of style, but as long as you're applying that science. And that's kind of like what I did with the leash pressure we were talking about earlier. I knew that if you turn the leash pressure on and you waited for the dog to comply, that you could teach leash pressure, but then I thought, well, what if I use something the dog already knows? Would it be easier and more effective? And sure enough, it was. And that's when it really gets cool. When you start learning so much, you can start coming up with your own kind of ideas.
That is. And I've seen different trainers with Grant at the 2 schools, and I did notice, you always notice something new from somebody else. And one of them that you do, and one of yours is when you have the leash and when you're trying to get them into the down, and you put and they go right on down. You can learn that. Their little picks up. You can say, okay, I like what Nate does, how he does this down. I like how Michael does this sit or whatever it is. But, and you can combine, that's when it all comes, that's when it's you, I guess, because then there's no trainer really like you. You got pieces of everybody else. And then your own demeanor and the way not everybody can relate to a dog. They should be the ones maybe not training.
Well, the whole thing with the foot, using my foot on the leash, I was a little hesitant about posting that as well, because I was trying to think of somebody's perspective that doesn't know or understand dog training, and then they're just thinking, oh, well, you're just using force, you're just stepping on the leash. It's like, no, if you look at
you're not putting much pressure at all.
Not much pressure at all. And then the big thing is, so I saw a video by another trainer. In fact, somebody sent me the link, and they went, oh, this trainer is basically talking smack about you without saying your name specifically. I don't think he was. I think I'm not the only trainer that will use a leash and step on it. But the person in the video says, oh yeah, there's trainers out there that'll just step on the leash and make the dog do it, and that's superficial and the dogs don't learn. It's like, no, that's no different than luring the dog with food. It's another cue, because the dog knows that the lure predicts food, no different than the leash cue predicts food. They both predict rewards. Therefore, to the dog, if taught correctly, they both give the dog the same feeling of enjoyment and training as the lure does when done correctly. And then as long as you say the command before you do the cue, the dog learns the command, and that just simply becomes a means to an end. And what's the end? The dog doing it on the verbal command or whatever.
And that goes back to timing being so important too. I mean, you know, that's very important.
The timing?
Yeah, the timing you were talking about the other day too. Kind of like, you know, don't
that's
get
why markers are so important.
Right, and you were doing the clicker training. I can see where the clicker is good because we've done, well, where we did clicker training was with PetSmart, you know, a little PetSmart thing. But I mean, we hadn't done it since then. But when you started talking about it the other day, and I started listening to your reasoning, it makes a lot, because it's always the same sound.
Yes.
Because our yeses can be different.
It can change.
Yeah, and it can depend on really how we feel that day. We may not feel good, might have a headache. You know, we might want to be getting done with it right there. We have something else we got to do. So you know, a lot of things can change that.
And you know, what's funny is I haven't really used a clicker in years because I've been using my voice. Right. And I've had a handful of people, they wanted to see how I would train if I were to train with a clicker. Yeah. And to be honest, I actually really enjoyed using the clicker with Jet, because it is so effective. Now, of course, just like anything, you have to make sure you're using it correctly, which makes me think of something, because you will see a lot of people using clickers, and if they don't fully understand how a clicker works, they're not going to be doing it correctly. And a perfect example of it is in the movie Jurassic World. Yeah. So Jurassic World, where, what's that actor's name? I forget. The one that's working with the raptors, which I always like to say a Malinois is a raptor. You know, a lot of Malinois trainers call them raptors. Right. But if you remember, so those of you watching, pull up Jurassic World and pull up the part where he's training the raptors, where he's on the overhead balcony or over the balcony looking down on them. Right. He's taking the clicker and he's just going click, 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 click. Yeah. The clicks meant absolutely nothing. It was just, and I've seen,
just like when you're saying sit, 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 sit. Yeah. You know.
Exactly. He wasn't using it the correct way. Right. You know, and it's not. This is another misconception. People think that, okay, if I use a clicker, click and I reward, click reward. If I want to give the dog a big reward, then I go click, 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 click for one thing. No, that actually just creates more confusion than anything. If you want to increase the value of the click, increase the value of the reward that the click predicts. Right. So it's still one click, and then you can make the reward a little bit bigger, which would make the click then more valuable to the animal that you're training, because that's all part of that operant conditioning. And operant conditioning is what we apply to any animal we're training.
Right, we do.
We use
whether
it
we realize it or not.
Yeah, even ourselves, even humans. Right. Yeah. It's all operant.
Always getting what you want. You know, the way to get what you want. That's true. I think one of the biggest things too, from my own experience of learning in my little bit older age here, is be open-minded to new things, because I was trained with the choke collar, and I can think back when I was training my dogs, when I was showing them and stuff and getting them, even just leash breaking, simple as leash breaking. You know, we were taught to pull them towards the ground, do it about 3 times. Well, now I think about it, that's a horrible way to do it. When I watched the new ways, you ended up getting bit on your ankle.
Oh, yeah.
You ended up getting bit on your ankle because the dog didn't like it. You're not building a good relationship with the dog. You're hurting the dog. Yeah. And it's probably harmful to the dog. So I think you have to be open to new things. Just because you're older or you did certain things a certain way, you need to.
With your service dogs that you train now, do you use positive punishment?
Yeah, yeah.
When do you use that in the training? Because there are people out there that will say, you should never use positive punishment. It should, and for those watching, just a refresher, positive punishment is anything added to the equation to stop a behavior. So yelling at a dog, it's not a preferred technique, but that is an example of positive punishment. Yeah. A leash pop on a training collar is positive punishment. Yeah. Squirting your dog with a squirt gun, if you do that to stop them from barking, some people will. That's another form of positive punishment. Anything we're adding to the equation. There are a lot of people out there that say you should never use positive punishment on a dog, which I disagree with, but I also disagree with starting day one using positive punishment, because I don't think it's fair for somebody or a dog to be corrected without ever knowing what they're being corrected for. That's some of that traditional dog training techniques. They start with corrections.
I think as long as it works and it don't hurt the dog,
It's conducive to the training.
It's conducive to the training. So I think.
When would you start implementing that? Are there certain situations you might use a correction on earlier in the training, and then times where you wait till later? Like, I'll give you an example. Dogs that I train, I will correct them day one if they're trying to chase a car.
Yeah,
if they're
definitely.
If they're
something
trying,
that's going to hurt them,
right?
Especially, and that brings up another subject, the e-collar. And I can speak on these things because I felt a certain way, and I've changed my mindset since Grant went to Tom Rose and Michael Ellis, and I've seen him use it, and I've seen that they really do not hurt the dog if they're used appropriately, and you're trained. You need to be trained on them.
Well, Michael Ellis is, he is so good at explaining things.
Yeah.
Because people ask me about remote collar training, and
Yeah.
I don't have any online training for that, but I do use remote collars.
I think the collars before maybe gave them a bad reputation, maybe, and even the word shock collar sounds, I'm electrocute your dog.
Yeah,
where
that's
the e-collar or other names for them.
Remote training collar.
Remote collar, because I was opposed to it at first until.
I was too.
We have to be open-minded and realize just because we aren't educated on something doesn't make that wrong. We don't know anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
So
and it's application.
Application.
For example, a tool that I don't like is the gentle leader. I'm not a fan of it. I don't like to use it. But if it's used correctly, it is fine. It's okay. It's safe. Now, with the gentle leader, for those watching that may not know what it is, it's the strap that goes around the dog's muzzle. It hooks underneath, and it gives you the ability to control the dog's head, and you can close the dog's mouth.
I think it was also the intent to keep them from pulling.
Pulling, because if they start to pull, they get the pressure this way.
I've used it before too. Yeah, I like the new ways we do things a lot.
Right. I've had clients that use the gentle leader. Yeah. Like I had this one client. She was an older woman. She was around 80 years old, and she used it, and it worked great for her because her dog would walk right until the dog felt it.
Like you said, certain applications,
and the dog wouldn't pull, and she wasn't pulling on it. It prevented the dog from pulling, and it worked for her, and it worked for that dog. Great. It's fine. Just because I don't like it doesn't mean that I'm going to say don't ever use it. Yeah. Now I do say used incorrectly, it could be bad for the dog. Right. Just like a shock collar. If you use a shock collar incorrectly, you could traumatize the dog. You can create fear issues. You can create a lot of problems. So what I always tell people, if you're interested in using a remote collar, go on Learburg Online University, find Michael Ellis, and download his course. And I was recommending that to people without even personally going through the course myself because I trust Michael Ellis as a trainer. I have the highest respect for him.
He has a great reputation.
Not only is he good, we were talking about this earlier, not only is he incredibly good at training dogs, but he's so well spoken and so articulate. You said earlier, like, the man's so smart, he could have been a rocket scientist if he wanted to be, but he chose to pursue the career. Smart, and lucky for all of us, because we get the benefit from what he's given us in the dog training community. But I was recommending it to people, and I said, you know what, I should check it out just so I know exactly what I'm recommending. Right. And of course, I wasn't wrong. The course is phenomenal. Right. It's incredible. The first 15 minutes of it, I learned like 3 new things that I've since added to my repertoire of techniques. So even for a skill trainer that already knows remote collar training, it's worth watching that. But point being, if it's done correctly, it's a great tool.
Same thing with the prong collar. Grant told me, because I think I actually started thinking I was going to train Chance before Grant got home from Tom Rose, and he said, just wait and let me do it. Just wait and let me do it, because I was seeing some of the things he was using and thinking I should go when I'd never been trained on it. So you need to be trained. To me, you need to be trained on the e-collar. You need to be trained on the prong collar as well.
What's great too is people are becoming way more open-minded. As we were saying earlier, the general public has become way more educated on not just dog training, but they're more educated on the tools. They're even more educated on nutrition. Right. You can even see a lot of these dog food companies are even starting to cater to that, saying, like, look at our first ingredient is chicken or our first ingredient is beef. Right. So the general public, right, instead of corn.
All the red things you can't.
Oh yeah,
colorings and
color red 1, blue 2, So the general public,
and their dog food looks that color, even when they poop. Sometimes.
And I was really nervous too about saying anything on my channel at all about remote training collars. Yeah. But to my surprise, people have been very open-minded. Yeah. I've posted some of the videos where I discuss it, and people have reached out and they said, I was so curious about remote collars. I didn't know if they were good or bad, but now based on hearing you discuss it a little bit, I'm doing more research on it.
I think if you're planning on doing an off-leash, and a lot of people want off leash, then I think you're going to need the e-collar.
That's the only way.
I mean, just like you were talking about the dog running out in the road getting hit. I mean, you want a good correction on that.
Yeah.
You need to be like, I'm not going to forget what I just got for heading to that road.
I'd rather correct my dog once than have him get hit by a car.
Right.
And even what I tell people with my own collar is, or with my dogs rather, the funny thing is if I do go to a lesson and I'm taking my training collar with, in case the client wants to use it or they're interested in off-leaf training, I have to hide it from my dogs because if they see it, they become so excited because they think we're going somewhere. Because I only use it if I'm going somewhere where they're going to be off-leash.
Right.
So they see the collar come out and they're like, we're going, where are we going? Are we going to the beach? Are we going on a hike?
Right.
And for me, it's my safety net.
Yeah.
You know, if I was practicing, I don't know what it's called when you're doing the stuff at a circus, you're swinging around, you know, they have their safety net in case they fall. Nobody wants to fall into the safety net, but it's nice to have it there in case you need it. And that's really what it is, because once a dog's trained on a remote collar, I almost never have to use it.
Right. You can have a, what is it called, a Furby or something that Grant, it's kind of like a choke chain, but it's not really attached, it's hanging there. I guess it's kind of like a reminder. They think that might be where I don't understand it completely. But
that actually just made me think of those you see these new collars that are coming out. They've been out for a couple years now, maybe 5 years, but I think they're really cool. They're collars that have a GPS tracker in it.
Yeah.
So now, if you live somewhere where you're worried, maybe you're worried about your dog getting away, like the microchip is great. You know, you should definitely have your dogs microchipped. Is that something that you do with your service dogs before they go to?
All of them are microchipped,
Super important. These collars are cool because if somehow your dog does
another
get
responsible
away,
breeder tendency is to chip their dogs.
That's of course if you're you're training them to be service dogs, so you're giving that. But like a puppy, you're not able to microchip usually until they're a little bit.
No.
But you can.
Yes, you can. At 6 weeks
For some reason,
old.
I was thinking
6 weeks old. Gus was microchipped at 6 weeks old. His first.
I know where my confusion came from. A lot of times veterinarians recommend that if you're going to spay or neuter the puppy when you get them, to wait till you do that to microchip. Right. Because then, you know, the dog's already going through the surgery, they just add that in with it.
And I'm glad you brought that up. That's one area, veterinarians are great, but they're not, some of them are breeders. The old vets a lot of them were breeders. Not so much anymore. A lot of the veterinarians are pushing more the adopt, don't shop against the breeder type thing. But you should never spay or neuter a dog at 6 months old like they suggest.
I've heard so many different time frames on when to do it, and I honestly don't know what's the best. And a lot of people, I think, they don't know either because there's a lot of information on it.
I spay and neuter my dogs when they're 15 months old. I feel like that has given them time for the hormones. You have the male.
So that's what I've heard too, yeah.
And it does affect,
I've heard waiting until 2 years so they reach full maturity.
Yeah.
That gives them time to develop the way that they're supposed to develop, you know.
Another example, if you're looking for a reputable breeder, don't buy one that breeds their dogs back to back all the time. And a lot of the younger breeders are breeding dogs before they're a year old, like when they first come in the first season. And this is kind of an old-fashioned thing I will always stick to. I do not breed my dogs until they're at least after their second heat. They're babies. They're still developing themselves. I've seen some dogs when they were bred at 8 months old, and you can look at their teeth, and it's like calcium deficiency. Their teeth start eroding away.
Oh, wow.
So they're not ready to have babies at 9 months. I mean, puppies grow so fast and grow up so fast. I mean, 9 months is no time for a puppy. So I don't breed them. I only breed my kennel dogs. Neuter my kennel dogs if they need it. I usually do not neuter my dogs. I can keep them separated, keep them from breeding.
Yeah.
So unless I'm placing them somewhere. If I go to place any of my dogs, they're always neutered or spayed.
Now, I know you're training mostly, or your breeding and your puppies are mostly going into your service dog program. Are you still offering puppies to the public if they want a good family pet or something like that?
Usually if I have a litter, and I have, collies can range from having 1 puppy to 12. I've had it all in between. And if I have a litter I usually have people that's asked for my puppies. I had a bunch of inquiries this last time. And I check them out. They have to fill out an application. most of the time, I never ship my puppies. I either travel with them or drive them there.
You came out here.
Yeah, I don't ship my puppies. Yeah, I mean, so much can happen to them on the plane. So that's another good way to check out a breeder. But
yeah, every time I've gotten a puppy, I've traveled to the location.
Yeah. A lot of people ship, and I'm sure a lot of times it's fine. And I've wondered, but I would hate a dog just to be, and usually they're young, like 10 weeks, 12 weeks old, just put on a plane. So I did ship one to Italy, but the guy had a actual person come get him. Actually, he does this for a living, a transporter type thing. And I don't know what kind of plane it was. It's a plane for that. So that's the only way I would let him go. He went to Italy.
But you're trying overall to minimize the amount of bad experiences that may possibly happen, even though it could quite possibly be completely okay every single dog. But the off chance that maybe something unpleasant happens and creates this bad experience for the puppy, that it could affect them for their entire life. Because that is the most important time, is from when they're born to 16 weeks. Now I'm kind of curious on what your opinion is on this, because if you look up the age of a puppy, the imprinting stage, almost everywhere says 8 to 16 weeks. Now, I always say it's from when they're born until 16 weeks. I say that's their imprinting stage.
Yeah. That's why some dogs have such a problem when you clipping their nails. They're actually like they're a human's privates, actually. That's how pretty much tender they can be to the dog. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So that's very important. Even sitting, watching, when you're watching, and you can do these things while you're doing other things, watching TV as a 2-week-old puppy. Usually I wait and have the mother outside because she's usually having a fit. If the puppy, she hears the puppy or sees he's gone, I lay him right here and I talk to him and let him hear the TV and different noises. So yeah, I would say imprinting starts at birth.
I'm glad you
might
said
even
that
be
too.
earlier than that.
Yeah, I mean, because I've seen puppies that have come from, bad situations, and let's say the whelping box wasn't kept clean, the dogs or the puppies weren't kept clean. Then you
I've
find
seen that they're filthy.
Yes, I had this one dog that it did not matter. If you put him in a crate, he would go number 2 and he would lay in it.
And it can be there forever. Grant has I'm not sure that. He has a dog that was kept in a condition kind of like that, and the dog is almost 2. And he has to clean his crate every day.
It's hard to break.
Yeah. Collies are pretty easy with that. They don't like they like to be clean.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like most of them do like to be clean, and that's why that whelping box being kept clean is so important. Because like I said, I had one dog that came from a very dirty situation, and the dog was okay being dirty, and this goes back to motivation. A dog will always do whatever's most motivating. Now, a dog that is kept the way you do it, it's clean, everything's organized. I mean, you're cleaning that out 3, 4, 5 times a day. It's a constant.
Yeah, it is.
But it does.
It's work. It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. Yeah. And
puppy raising is so important. So I would say yes, imprinting. Just like with humans, the daddy always talks into the belly of the mama. So, that if you think about it, that's imprinting.
Oh yeah.
As for humans, I mean, they recognize the father's voice. They say.
And like you said earlier too, where you say you like to provide affection towards each dog so they know they're cared for. That is something that I agree with Cesar Millan on. Cesar Millan says if you want a balanced dog, they need mental, physical stimulation every day, and they need affection every day.
Why should they be any different? That's what we need, right?
Yeah.
Why do you think they're any different than us, really?
Absolutely. And I try to follow that with my own dogs. I try to give them some sort of mental stimulation every day, some sort of physical exercise. And then, I like my snuggle time at night. When I finish my work, I sit down on the couch. Both of my dogs pretty much sit on top of me. And I enjoy it, I think, as much as they do.
Yeah, you do.
My dog, Ari, grabs her little blanket.
Stress relief from the day, because dogs are so much easier light than people. And I love people. I do love people a lot. But
I always say I love dogs. I like people, but I love dogs.
Love dogs, yeah. And I love people a lot, so... They're just easier. They're easier, and they always show love back no matter what you do.
They don't hold grudges.
They don't hold grudges.
We could go on and on about how awesome dogs are.
Yeah, we could. We could.
Is there anything else as far as advice or tips that you can give the audience that is out there trying to train their own service dog that you could think of? Maybe things you ran into with socializing or training or nutrition or whatever.
I think pretty much everything we talked about. I think find a good trainer that connects with the dog. If you're going to watch them on YouTube, there's so much on YouTube we can learn now.
Well, there's a lot. I mean, if we want to point out good YouTube channels, Michael Ellis is on Learburg, so there's a lot of great videos from him. I'm a big fan of Forrest Mickey as well. Right. He has a lot of good stuff on there. You have Robert Cabral. He's really good as well. I think I'm messing up his name a little bit. There's a trainer in North Carolina. I can't remember what her name is, but she's pretty good, and her channel's starting to grow pretty fast. There's another canine one. I'll just, you know what, for the description for those watching, I'll just put all the links
put them in there,
to all the different YouTube channels that I think provide value. Even one that people bash, so a lot of people bash on Zach George.
Yeah.
Now, Zach George has the biggest dog training YouTube channel.
Right.
Now, I've watched every single one of, not every single one of any particular trainer, but I've watched a lot of dog trainer videos out there to see what type of information people are getting. And Zach George is not as bad as a lot of these other, dog trainers just feel the need to bash on him, but you can learn a lot of good stuff from his channel. The only thing you have to realize is that, so like for me, my process is step 1, engagement training. Step 2, teaching the behaviors. And this is aside from socializing and all that other stuff, of course, that we want to do.
Right.
Step 3, I teach the leash pressure. Step 4, I add the command. Step 5, I teach the stay with the pressure. Step 6, I add corrections for reliability. Yeah. He just doesn't do the corrections and he doesn't do the leash pressure. But everything else that I do, he does pretty much the same. You know, he just doesn't have those other elements. So you still want to even look at, even if you're a balanced trainer, you could still learn from that.
You can always learn from somebody else.
There's good information everywhere.
I think what people need to learn, not just the people looking to train the service dog, but trainers and maybe even just people in general, is not to be so negative to one another, especially in your own field.
Oh, I can't stand that.
I mean, number one, it really makes, only person that makes look bad is the one being so negative.
Right.
It's kind of like everybody looks at it and says, what an idiot. I know I do. Yeah. And, because like you said, we can learn from each other. Yeah. And just because you don't do it the way Mike Ellis or Tom Rose does not mean them guys are wrong. It's just the way they've learned, or maybe that's how they have adapted to doing training. Yeah. So I think there's enough dogs out there to train for everybody. Yes. I don't think it has to be a competition. I think we always do better when we lift people up than put them down.
I couldn't agree more.
If you see something you don't like, stroll on. You don't have to comment on everything.
Well, and here's the thing too. Pretty much every dog trainer out there, professional or non-professional, and really, what's the difference between a professional dog trainer and a regular dog trainer? Well, the professional gets paid. Right. That's the only difference. Right. If you're training your own dog at home, you're a dog trainer. That's right. If you're a breeder and you train your dogs, you're a dog trainer. Yeah. We are all dog trainers, and we are dog trainers because we care about dogs, because we love dogs, and we're all trying to do what we believe is best for that dog. So the best way to look at it is just like you said, open-minded. I've learned techniques from, and I'm using Zach George because he's the most well-known pure positive. I've used techniques I've learned from his channel. I've used techniques I've learned from Robert's channel. I've used techniques that I learned from this other guy. I can't think of his name. Gosh darn it. But you know, I've been able to learn different things, and it may not even be something that you 100% like, okay, I'm going to use it exact, but maybe 80% of that I can take bits and pieces and I can create something that works perfectly for the dog that I'm working with.
So you take a little bit of everything, and you may not have invented the certain thing, but you do your own program. It's your own program. I mean, you didn't steal it from anybody. Everybody else kind of uses some of it, but we
all need to steal from each other.
Yeah, because we can all learn from each other. I mean,
absolutely.
Everybody can learn. I can learn from my grandson. Yeah. I can learn from my 3-year-old granddaughter. There's things we can learn from each other.
Well, I'm a huge fan of Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan is, if you watch his podcast, so I'm sure a lot of my followers and viewers watch Joe Rogan. he's always trying to build everybody else up.
Yeah.
He's not trying to build anyone or push anyone down. He's
Yeah.
like, you should start a podcast. I'll help you do this. You need to do this. You need to do that as well. And he's trying to build everybody else up. And that's kind of what I want. I want to follow that and do what he kind of does as well.
Yeah, I think we can be more supportive of each other. Even if somebody texts you, or that's one good thing. If you see something on Facebook, you don't have to do it publicly. If you have a real concern or question, then you can message them and do it politely and privately. That's how it should be done.
Yeah.
And not like you're trying to be Mr. I know everything. Is what it looks like.
I mean, in fact, on my own channel, I've had people ask questions on certain things that I haven't made videos on.
Right.
And I have other trainers that I think are good on YouTube. Like, they're not my trainers, other YouTube dog trainers. And I'll find the video that person did that I think was very well made, and I'll send that to them. I'm like, here, check out this video. You should also follow them. They're really good. They're very informative. They may have something that I don't, or that I don't know about even. I mean, I definitely don't know everything about dog training. I've only been doing this for 9 years. There's people out there that have been doing it for 30 years, 40 years. And they have all that time and experience to add a lot of value. And even those people, like when I was talking to Tom Rose is like, oh yeah, I'm still learning.
He is. And they can also learn from younger people.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of things that were done in the past that are not the best way to do it. And I think a good trainer is open-minded to that, no matter how old they are. And I think you have to be open-minded. Maybe try it for yourself and see how it works.
Well, yeah, I've even worked with animal behavioralists. And, people are always asking too, like, what's the difference between a dog trainer and an animal behavioralist? For example, I would say Cesar Milan is more of an animal behavioralist. I mean, even if you go to his website, it says, we don't teach dogs sit and down. That's not what we do. That's a behavioralist is more about the dog's behavior, analyzing it, and setting up home environments.
Like we were talking about earlier about the aggressive dog and how you handle it, like sitting outside the kennel with your back to the dog. That's more of a behavior. You have an aggressive dog, you're trying to kind of get through to the dog. Even if it's not for too many people to handle the dog needs care. So like if you're working at a vet's office or even a shelter or whatever, you get certain dogs and they're just fearful, and they're going to bite. They will bite, but you can use some of those skills. Maybe you're the one that can break through to him. Maybe you're the one that should adopt that dog and take it home so he's not put to sleep. Because he's a great dog at home. You can keep him isolated from other people.
Now, speaking of other resources out there that could help people and help them with their dogs and their training, are there any books that you would recommend or any programs you would recommend to people watching? Like me, I always recommend if somebody is thinking of becoming a breeder, I say get the DVD set of Puppy Culture. Watch the entire thing, study it. It's broken down in a brilliant way to really give you a good understanding of the type of work and commitment that's going to go into doing it if it's something you want to pursue. Are there any books that you might recommend? You said you've read a lot of dog training books or any video courses, anything.
Yeah, I think the best thing to do is if you're looking for number one, if you can't decide what breed you really want, I think purebred dogs make wonderful service dogs, so I would recommend going to maybe one of your AKC shows and watching, and go just to watch the dogs, see which ones actually appeal to you through your eye, which ones you like, and maybe contact some of those breeders and talk to them. Look them up on the AKC standard, what their standard is, what they were bred. Very important to see what they were bred to do. Like we were talking about, the Border Collie is an awesome dog, awesomely smart. But
if you're a couch potato, not the right dog.
They're so smart, and Collies are like that too. They're so smart, they get bored easy. They get bored easy. So that may not be the dog for you. That's another thing I think is playing with them.
Huge.
That can be a big motivator.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Playing with them, So I get out there and play with my dogs, and they love it. It's like they'll wait on that. Like you were talking about extending out the rewards. I think they know in the end, Nate's going to play with me. He's going to throw the frisbee. That's their reward, and I think they work up to that.
It's so important for bonding too.
It's like Ari out there loving it, didn't she? playing.
Well, I could already even see just with the puppy that you brought so young, already still very focused on you.
Yeah.
Because you spent that extra time, even when they're so young. I think play is so important. People ask me, they're like, well, how important is play? I say play is almost more important, if not more important than obedience.
Yeah.
I mean, I play with my dogs and the dogs I train significantly more than I train them. I play with them all the time.
I think that imprinting stage can go for even longer than the weeks. I think it can go even earlier and longer because Chance, this is Grant was still at Tom Rose when I started training Chance from, I started from day one really, but really training for, I was doing all the social stuff. I wasn't doing any of the training, but he become so, I guess, imprinted to me, attached to me. When we would train, I couldn't even be around. He's like, I don't want you, because it's like, he looked at me like, do I have to, or is this right?
Well, because you were the most motivating factor.
To him, yeah.
Yeah.
And even after we placed him, I went to speak at Aubrey School because they were I had to go remind them of the ADA. They were not listening. Obviously they didn't study. I'd already talked to them on the phone, sent them a letter. They still wasn't letting her bring Chance to school. So when he called me and I said, let me come talk to all the kids, all the classes. And so I did. And I was amazed at how great the kids understood not to bother a service dog. I mean, that's one thing that's changed too. I think people are learning, don't touch the service dog, they're doing a job.
Most people are.
I think the kids are better than the adults at it. I really do. And so we had a table. I told him, I was kind of demonstrating and how they should respond to him and what he was going to be doing at school. And she was there with me. She was like doing the handling, and I was explaining what was happening and how they should react if something happened, or how they should just ignore him, basically what I said. Well, she was on that end of the table holding the lead, right? He got under the table and he was like crawling over to me, and I was like, he just wanted to be with me, and I was like, no, get back over there. So I stay away from him a good bit now. I'm like, there needs to be a break here. When I go to visit and check on him, he's all over me, all up in my lap, loving me. Grant said, because when Grant was doing the Canine Good Citizen, with them and everything, actually that's one thing we do. We make sure we do the Canine Good Citizen with us, and then we let the handler, especially if it's a child, do it, and they get the ribbon and stuff like that.
So they know how to handle the dog.
Handle the dog, because there's a lot of things, like them making the dog sit and stay, and them going away, and the dog knows he has to stay there till she gets back. Well, he said, you just need to stay. You need to stay inside.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because that's something that I was doing last week, intentionally separating Jet. For those that watched my clicker episode, that puppy Jet, I was separating from Spock because they were becoming almost too attached, that I didn't want either one of them to develop separation anxiety when Jet had to go home. And so we intentionally had to start separating, just like separating you from the puppy, so they don't get that separation anxiety.
That's another thing we do with Palmetto Service Dog. We go back and check on them. We make sure everything's going okay. And so when we do go back, I don't know. I mean, he has a fit. When he hears me ring the doorbell, he can see out the window. He has a fit. So what I told him, I said, Grant was there with me. I said, go put him on his climb. I'm gonna go back outside. You're gonna stand there. You're gonna correct him when he jumps up. And I rang the doorbell, and he tried to get up. We're trying to teach her how to do the corrections and stuff, because we can't be there all the time. We don't want him to slip too far. If you're not the trainer, they let them. Even the dogs Grant trains, they don't revert all the way back, but you can see they've gotten slack, because a lot of times the owners are not going to continue.
And that's why the follow-ups are so important.
Are good. So. And
I like that you keep in contact and you continue to help and continue to train and work with them. Now, one thing I want to do before we finish this episode is there anything that my viewers can do to support your mission of training service dog? Because service dogs are in such high demand right now. People can't afford them. Most people can't train their own service dog, and there's not that many resources out there available to them. So the ones that do need it, all of us need to come together as a whole collectively to help them become to be in a situation in order to get the service dog, and your organization helps provide that, but it's also not free for you.
No, it's not free.
It costs a lot of money, it costs a lot of time. Is there any way people can donate to the nonprofit, or can they buy one of your shirts off the website? What can they do to help support? And one thing I'm going to do, I don't know if you're aware of this, but once a month, all the stuff that comes in from my Patreon
Oh.
goes towards something.
Oh,
So
wow.
we're going to send it to you guys.
Oh, wow.
It's
Thank
not
you.
that much. It's a small amount.
Yeah.
So it's only, I
Oh.
think it's at around $300, give
Wow.
or take.
Well, that's wonderful.
So I'm going to ask when you go back to do some video with
Okay.
Grant and some of the training to show people what you
Okay.
guys are doing.
Okay.
But
Glad
yeah,
to-
so you're going to get that $300 from my
Okay.
Patreon account. But what else can they do to help support you guys in any way? I mean, I'll even create a shirt and sell it
Oh.
on my website, and all the profits will go to you guys for that as well. But
Okay.
what else can they do?
That's great. Well, you can go on to palmettoservicedogs.com. That's my, and it's dogs, not dog.
I'll put
Service
the font
Dogs,
up, and it'll be in the description.
and it'll go to my website, and I have a contact page. You can contact me. It has a PayPal donation. You can.
Do you have a Patreon account?
No, I don't have. I heard.
Set that up.
Yeah, I need to set that up.
Because what it is, people who want to support what you're doing,
Yeah.
they can go on there and they could donate as small as $1 a month,
Yeah.
$5 a month, $10 a month.
Right.
And if you're doing it directly to help a nonprofit, so let's say I
Right.
decide that I want to support and I'm going to send you guys $20 a month.
Right.
I could link that up with the Patreon. I don't have to worry about it. Every month it takes the 20, and then at the end of the year you can send the donation receipt out to whoever contributed for
Yeah,
that.
that's
And that
great.
could help quite a bit. I
A
mean,
lot, yeah.
like how much, let's say, your goal is $5,000 a month, and that will cover the cost of everything.
Right.
So now you don't have to worry about the cost. All the people
Right.
who are getting service dogs from you, they don't have to worry about
That's
it because
right.
all the supporters are helping you with this mission that's so important.
Yeah.
So I would
That would-
recommend setting that up.
Yeah, you need to, yeah, give me that link.
Once
too.
you set it up, it's going to be in
Yeah.
the description. So
Yeah.
I'm going to be posting this coming up Tuesday. So it may not be in there just yet, but tell Grant to do it. Be like, hey,
I
get
will.
on this.
I will.
And it gives them little perks as well.
Yeah.
So it's cool to have that set up.
One thing that would be great for you to do, because I've had a couple friends do this, and it's through Facebook too, and it's good because they automatically put it in my account, is when you have a birthday. I mean, you probably seen.
Oh yeah,
people
birthday
do
fundraisers.
birthday fundraisers through Facebook. If you would do that, the last person that did that raised $280.
You know how you
That's
get.
amazing.
So we did that with camis and canines, and
Uh-huh.
it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we were talking about it earlier. Camis and canines struggled quite a bit with the pandemic. And
Right.
the overhead cost was $12,000 a month,
Yeah.
and
Wow.
people not being able to pay their own bills. It
Right.
was hard
It's
for them
affected
to.
all nonprofits, I think.
Yeah, it definitely. I mean, affected for-profit as well.
Yeah.
It affected everybody.
Yeah.
So what we would do was every day I would go on Facebook and then I would look up whose birthdays were coming up,
Uh-huh.
and I messaged everybody who had
Oh,
birthdays
wow.
coming up, and I said, "Hey, happy
hadn't
early
thought about
birthday!"
that.
Yeah, and so we did that, and that raised between $5,000 to $10,000 a month.
Wow, and you can make a donor base that way.
Mm-hmm.
See, because what we also do is when we send out those, of course we have to the end of the year statements too, but we also try to give an update and some pictures of what we've done with the dogs the year before, so they know that their money is being used, wisely and doing what it's asked to do.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I know nonprofit. So of course, with a nonprofit, all the information is
Right.
available to the public.
Right.
But I've known nonprofits before. I thought was really cool. They'd have a page on their website,
Right.
and they'd show exactly where all the money was going to.
Yeah.
So people knew what their dollar was
Yeah.
doing. Unlike some nonprofits out there, 70% of every dollar donated was just
Right.
going to the
Right.
the
Right. I don't take one penny from Palmetto. I don't get paid, and Grant gets paid for the training course, and actually pretty cheaply compared to what it had cost.
he
before.
does for his business.
Yeah. Right, and you're right, and and our admin cost is only like 2.3%. My wife is our accountant, and she does she helps set up. You know what it is setting up a nonprofit.
Oh, it's a lot of
It's
work.
a lot of work. So she's even with just the accounting and setting it up.
Well, if 91% or more of what's donated goes into the actual mission,
Right.
that's considered exceptional.
Right.
So a lot of nonprofits try to keep 9% or less
Yeah.
used towards paying employees,
Yeah.
paying trainers, paying
Right.
whatever. And it sounds like around 95% of yours goes
Yeah,
towards.
it does.
So 95 cents out of every dollar
Right.
goes directly in the
Right.
mission, and then 5% is paying staff.
Right. My kennel, which is Emory Pines, donates the dogs, so I'm not having to go buy a $2,500 dog or whatever. And so that's pretty much covered. And I usually donate my money to take care of the vetting. I try to do that because especially with the pandemics, it really has hurt a lot of nonprofits.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and,
So
and
we're
the
just,
vet bills.
everybody's just trying to keep, and my wife being an accountant, she sees she does a lot of their books and stuff. She said, you're not the only one. She said, this is the way it is right now. So, because a lot of times with a nonprofit, it's a lot of work, and sometimes you think, why am I doing it? Mm-hmm. And then I remind myself of like the people I've helped, and that's all it really takes. Don't take too long to think about it.
Yeah,
but sometimes you do get discouraged because you have a lot of people want a dog, which is great. That's what we want to provide, but you have a lot less want to support. And so we have fundraisers from time to time, like the Chances Choices. I wrote a children's book, which is pretty good. I mean, when I usually post them on Facebook and stuff. And
you should make a book on training a service dog.
Yeah.
Have Grant start writing it.
That's what I should do, huh?
Yeah.
I have my trainer right there to tell me what to, exactly what to.
And
I know the puppy raising and the socializing. I'm pretty good at that.
All that could be in the book too.
My training was a little bit outdated. I mean, it was like, now that I look back at it, I'm like, no, don't do that. Let Grant do this.
We all learn.
Yeah, and he's had great success, and I really am proud of him. I mean, I appreciate everybody's support. It really doesn't matter if it's $5 or if it's $500. I realize that we would not exist without our donors. Mm-hmm. They are as big a part of helping these people and provide these dogs as I am. Oh yeah, and it doesn't matter to me how much you gave. I mean, I do appreciate large amounts. I don't want to say that.
No, you don't.
But, I want to just say I appreciate any donation that you can give because we need it. And we only exist because of our donors.
Yeah.
And so.
Because they do give us the opportunity to do what it is that we do,
This is not sponsored by Nate Schoemer. His manual, and I truly say this, I've read a lot of the books. And some of them I'm like, yes, it's a lot of good information. Fluff, it's probably what you really need to know some of it's what you really need to know if you're going to be a trainer. But as far as practical and great for a person that maybe the first time to train their dog, that's the book that you're really going to get something out of and not really kind of get bored or frustrated and put it down.
I appreciate that.
You can sit down. Yeah. I sit down and read it pretty much in one, and I'm not a reader. I ain't crazy about reading. And so when I can sit down there and I can read it all the way through while I'm keeping my grandkids, it's pretty good. And having the YouTube channels to go to, I felt like, especially if you don't have a great memory and remember everything, or you remember things a little bit differently, that book kind of puts you back. When I was reading it, I could think back on the very video that you did, and I was like, that's it. That's it. So yeah, I love his book. I definitely would. It's worth a lot more than what you paid for it for Amazon. I can promise you that.
I appreciate that.
Yep.
I mean, the book wouldn't be where it is if it wasn't for all my supporters.
Yep.
I really appreciate you coming down, bringing your puppy that I'm so excited to train and work with. Thank you again, everybody, for watching. Of course, as always, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. All the links to everything that we discussed today is going to be in the description. So if you want to support Steve's nonprofit, if you want to check out some of those other YouTube trainers that I mentioned earlier, it's all going to be down there. Be sure to check it out. And as always, I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks again, Steve.
Thank you for having me.